Introduce to all the speakers as well as moderating the Q&A session after this. So before I go into the panel, I have been asked to give a very quick introduction to the UN SDGs. So I will just be giving about 10 minutes, very basic introduction about the SDGs, and we will then hopefully have a very much more in-depth discussion about how the SDGs can connect to the palm oil sector in our country and beyond. So Oscar, if you can go to the next slide, please. So some of you who may be a bit on the older side, like me, would know also, would have heard of the MDGs as well as the SDGs. The SDGs is the current generation, but before that we also had the MDGs. So I'm gonna just tell you about how this came about and how did we shift from the MDGs, which is the Millennium Development Goals, to the SDGs is what we have today. So it goes back to 1992 during the Earth Summit, when the countries adopted Agenda 21, which was a comprehensive plan of action to build a global partnership for sustainable development. And in 2000, about 189 countries actually signed the Millennium Declaration. And this was the basis of the Millennium Development Goals that you see on the screen. So this was basically 8 measurable goals to be achieved by 2015. This was considered quite revolutionary at the time because it was providing this global common language to reach a global agreement on global goals. So these goals were presented as realistic, easy to communicate, and had a clear monitoring mechanism. So you can see quite a lot of these kind of features also are seen in the SDG logos that we are most familiar with today. So by 2015, the end date of the MDGs, the world did manage to realize the first MDG of halving poverty in the world. But in the others, 2 to 8, the achievements was a bit uneven. So with the MDGs expiring in 2015, there was the need for a new set of goals. So next, please. Oscar, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So the next step was the more of acceptance and the understanding of the importance of sustainable development. So a very popular definition of sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And the picture on the right is quite a popular sort of depiction of the concept of sustainable development, which shows sort of an equal emphasis on at least 3 major elements, which is people, planet, and profit. Next, please. So this you can see the progression towards the SDGs. So in 2012, before the deadline of the MDGs, there was already a realization that we need to continue this. So the process to the SDGs started at this point. In 2013, a working group was created to develop a proposal for the SDGs. And in 2015, the expiry of the MDGs, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted, and which also introduced the 17 SDGs to the world. It also introduced a few other landmark multilateral agreements and policies. And 2015 was quite a landmark year for this, you know. So Paris Agreement was during 2015 as well as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, as well as the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Development, which I'll talk about in a while more. And in 2017, the framework indicators was agreed upon at the UN Statistical Commission. So we have the SDGs as well as their indicators in place by 2017. Next, please. So these are the logos that I think almost everyone are quite familiar with. We see this a lot nowadays. So you see the 17 goals, we have 160 targets as well. So this SDGs are basically a call for action by all countries and for all countries to promote prosperity while protecting the planet. So the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, which I mentioned in the previous slide, actually provides concrete policies and actions to support the implementation of these SDGs. Some of the key things about the SDGs that we must know is that they are not legally binding. The implementation of these SDGs are supposed to be led by the countries themselves, and this is to promote ownership so that the countries will be motivated by themselves to achieve what they can. And all stakeholders are expected to contribute to the realization of the SDGs. So this is where the multi-stakeholder partnership becomes really important, not just the government or any other single stakeholder. And apart from multi-stakeholder partnerships, another type of partnership which is really important is global partnerships to support national level initiatives. Next, please, Oscar. So this is how it looks like the SDG framework aligned in Malaysia. So Malaysia has aligned the SDGs, which is with its national development plans, starting with the 11th Malaysia plan. And we can see here that it's directly under the Prime Minister's office, and the EPU is functioning as the steering committee to make sure that Malaysia is on track. And Malaysia has actually presented our voluntary national review during the 2017 high-level political forum to show our progress. And we also held a SDG summit in 2019, themed the whole of nation approach, accelerating progress on the SDGs. So this is where the nation stands. And the next slide, please. So that is where I will also end my presentation, and I hope that this is a good basis for us to take to the next step, which is to see how specific sectors can also contribute in this multi-stakeholder partnership towards SDGs. So today's talk will be focused on the palm oil sector. So Oscar, you can stop sharing, and now I will go on to introduce our panelists for today. Okay, so today we have 4 panelists with us. They are Mr. Tan, who's representing Mr. Hasbollah from the MPOCC. We also have Dr. Harikrishna from Saimdabi, Dr. Denny from Heriot-Watt University, and Mr. Galau from Sarawak Oil Palms, who will be speaking to us shortly. I will introduce them in a bit more detail in a while. And just to give you a structure as well, we will then follow with 1 hour of a Q&A session, which will be led by myself as well as Ms. Khor Leng, who will be joining me for this session. And we will hope to have a very in-depth discussion, because we have 1 whole hour to really pick the brains of our panelists here. And we will end with a series of, I'll give everybody about 2 minutes each to have a wrap up, a concluding remark before we finish up. So that's how the structure will run today. So I will move immediately to our first speaker. Our first speaker is, our first presentation is by Mr. Muhammad Hasbollah Suparyono, who is the Senior Manager of Strategic Management in the Strategic Management Department at the Malaysian Palm Oil Certification Council, the MPOCC. He is, however, unable to attend today, so his presentation will be presented by his Technical Outreach and Extension Service Manager, Mr. Tan Chee Yong. Mr. Tan, if you please, you have about 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Helena. Okay, so let me share the slide. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, my name is Tan Chee Yong. I currently represent MPOCC for this talk panelists. So, okay, let's continue. Okay, first of all, let's talk about why there is sustainability. Okay, what come from sustainability? So, you look at it, it's all began in 1970s, where we come with the eco label certification. Okay, it comes from the forestry. because at the time they is concerned about how they can use raw material or natural resources from forests. So as goes by, in 1980s, we have this Rainforest Alliance beginning the seeking tropical snacks, harvest from Vietnam from a rainforest. So it comes from the forest, where people have a lot of so-called concern about how natural resources from forests are used or being used, or being harvested. So as time goes by, this principle started to so-called expand to others. So in 1990s to 2000s, we have this quite called food labeling, and also social responsibility, start to gain traction within the consumer. As time go by, more and more factors are involved. So this is where we get sustainability, segregation, auditing, and traceability. Because from 2000 onward, all this work coming in, sustainability, segregation, auditing, traceability, which start to play a major role in business. So in Malaysia, especially for palm oil sector, we have to say that MSPO will become the sensible solution to sustainability, or sustainable market demand, by consumer. So who is MPOCC? MPOCC is a scheme owner for Malaysia's Sustainable Palm Oil, MSPO. And our vision is to become a sustainable driver to transform the Malaysia palm oil supply chain for global market consumption. So our mission is to make MSPO a credible segregation scheme that is accepted by relevant stakeholders. So how we go about it? So I mentioned normally we go through a few steps. First we go through stepwise approach. First we try to get industry, especially the small medium grower, to adopt to the sustainability requirement. From zero. So it means we need to have a great awareness between them. Then also we need to start to have so-called assistance in terms of giving them technical knowledge. And lastly, we need to give a bit of financial support. Because to transition from a conventional oil palm or palm oil sector, you need to have a so-called stepwise approach. Because we can't just push the industry into sustainability agenda without giving any support. So that's why we also have we wish to raise the floor. Now, a lot of people always say we try to raise the bar, for the industry, but raising a bar is mean you try to screen out, the able and unable to commit. So instead for MSPO, we're looking at raising the whole industry. So as why plan is that MS standard is where we ensure the whole palm industry will adopt some approach by slowly introducing sustainability practices into them. And also we have a government commitment. So in terms of government commitment, we have intensive effort by government, especially on the sustainability agenda. In COP26, we have ambitious NDC. Which we want to have 40% of CO2 saving from the 2005 level. So this one, we can link it to the sustainability palm oil production, to so-called contribute to that sustainability agenda. Another thing is that we talk about local society inclusiveness. So in MSPO, we have a section or a standard that is specifically for the smallholders. Why? Because we understand, for smallholders, they need more help, because as you know, smallholder is come from the low income group, where for them, oil palm is a way of life. They just grow and they just get some income from them. For them to involve in sustainability, which is a big step for them, so we must be inclusive. So this is how MSPO be inclusive by having its own standard for smallholders. So this is the current standard for MSPO. We call it MS 2530 2022. Inside the standard itself, we have 5 principles. So principle one is talking about management commitment and responsibility, especially towards sustainability. Then we talk about transparency to make sure that all supply chain, okay, there's a transparency into our information flowing through all the supply chain. Number three, we talk about compliance with legal and other requirements. Okay, so it's legality. I think it's one of the so-called major so-called issue raised by the buyers, talking about legality of the product. Okay, then the fourth, we talk about responsibility to social, health, safety, and employment conditions. This more to social, it include human rights, include no forced labor and child labor. And the fifth will be environmental, natural resources, biodiversity, and ecosystem services. This will cover all the environment, okay, how to manage water responsibly, okay, to make sure that biodiversity exists, okay, so you include it in the MSPO principle. So now the objective of the new standard cities is to, one of them is to mitigate the impact of global warming. Okay, it's one agenda to support Malaysian government or Malaysian policy to mitigate the impact of global warming. Okay, and also in the MSPO, we will uphold labor principle. Okay, especially the universal declaration of human rights. Okay, so respecting human rights. So we also provide opportunity for indigenous and local communities because we promote sustainable development, especially to the local community and also the indigenous people. Also in here, we try to communicating sustainable practices to the stakeholders, especially the smallholders and also the industry. So we're hoping that industry by itself, okay, by uptick, okay, by taking up the MSPO, they can indirectly support the smallholders, because currently the smallholders will be able to involve in a sustainability practice, especially in the MSPO. Okay. Yeah. So UN SDG, yes, how MSPO support UN, okay, sustainable development goal. So in here we have 70 goals. Okay, normally we say that MSPO can relate to the 10 UN SDG. So because first to no property, because MSPO include smallholders. So we make smallholder manage to involve in the sustainability practices. So it's talking about make sure that smallholders are taken care of. Zero hunger related to poverty. Good health and well-being is in our principle. We talk about social responsibility. Okay. So in here, global, example, goal 12. Okay, responsible consumption and production is important goal. We link it to the need for improved agriculture and industrial practices, in certification and also sustainable palm oil production. This will include all the principle and standard in any principle and indicated in the new standard. Okay. For environment protection, yes, we have that. We could assist in the so-called climate change or climate action, because we require, currently the new standard require every supply chain to have a GHG calculation. It means they must declare the GHG they produce by them and take steps to reduce the GHG emission. Among others, yeah. Now, so there is a wide USDG. Now about impact. Okay, now this is the excerpt we get from others publishing. So for the sustainable, the role of sustainability palm oil in global food security and deforestation effort, April 12, 2021. So it's quoted that Malaysia aspiration is now for its entire palm oil industry to achieve MS certification by the end of 2021. We expected attendant benefit for tropical ecosystem. Okay, and also Malaysian rate of deforestation has decreased annually. It's very important. Then also from the global. Okay, in this slide is the study by the Carrot and UPM, where showing the real Malaysian deforestation by oil palm. Okay, so you can see that the peak of deforestation related to oil palm will roughly in year 1990s. Okay, but after that you can see the oil palm expansion is still going a bit up, still continuing, but the deforestation rate has been slowing down. Okay, this is mainly because the conversion of the palm oil is not from the forest area. Instead, it's from other agricultural land. Okay, the most example will be from the rubber. Okay, because at the time rubber price is going down, so a lot of rubber planters, they switch to oil palm, okay, to sustain themselves. So as you can see, the expansion of palm oil in Malaysia, okay, does not really, okay, link to deforestation. Okay, another thing is talking about the new standard. Currently, why isn't MSPO standard going to adopt HCV, high consumption value? Okay, I think this one, it will really help in terms of assess, okay, the value of the plantation, okay, especially that, okay, to prevent any oil palm from going into high consumption value area. Okay, so comprehensive guideline and requirement, okay, will be coming up, okay, another 1 or 2 months, and we sure that this will curb the deforestation and protect and also preserve potential consumption area. As mentioned in the MSPO standard, Principle 5, in environmental natural resources, policy and ecosystem services, criterion 1, okay, environmental management must be, okay, communicated and documented. So one of the element will be in HCV, okay, HCV. So about circular economy in power industry. Now, in MPOCC standard, we emphasize on renewable energy optimization and also require industry player to implement 3R concepts such as reduce, reuse, recycle of the waste. Okay, and also in the principle, we can see that we have criteria where efficient of energy use and use of renewable energy is encouraged. And also we also make sure that waste management and disposal are implemented. So this one, we hope that it can, okay, help in circular economy. And the new standard by MSPO, okay, by MPOCC will be MSPO, chain of custody of oil palm biomass. Okay, is talking about traceability of biomass from the MSPO certified plantation for renewable energy and also any material. So it means in MSPO, we already come up with a sort of standard to link, okay, the byproduct of palm oil, okay, to circular economy. Okay, this depends on the industry. If they wish to, they can use MSPO as a traceability for that. Okay, in MSPO, we try to promote net zero, okay, emission. Okay, so why is that we promote emission reduction through methane capture? Okay. As currently, what happens is that in MSPO, we especially for the palm oil mill, we encourage them to look at how to use more renewable energy, especially in terms of methane capture. Okay, so as you know, okay, palm slash oil, okay, a common term used to describe oil. It can be alternative feedstock for the production of biodiesel, okay, and also the hydrogenated vegetable oil, HVO, with complete renewable diesel alternative. And looking at more realistic to achieve, okay, palm oil have average emission of 0.45 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent per ton, compared to soya with 2.89 and also 2.47 for rapeseed and 1.8 for sunflower. Source is from the World Economic Forum 2021. Okay. Okay. In here, MSPO try to so-called link or to support nationally determined contribution, okay, NDC by Malaysia, which is to intend to reduce, okay, economy-wide carbon intensity against GDP of 40% in 2023, 2030 compared to the 2005 level. Okay, so in here, MPOCC plan to introduce a GHG calculator that will get, okay, that will get certified entity to calculate their GHG requirement and introduce plan to reduce it. This one requirement in the MSPO standard. Okay, so we will get a group of experts to set the baseline value for each part of the standard and potentially contribute to the national agenda for GHG reduction. Okay, sorry. Okay, for smallholders, yes. Okay, government have provided incentive for MSPO certification to defer the cost of MSPO especially for the smallholders. Since implemented in January 2018, we have provided smallholder with incentive covering 100% of the ordering cost, the cost of construction of storage for pesticide and fertilizer, purchasing of personal protective equipment, PPE, also training and documentation. This with the help of MPOP. Okay. So the incentive from the government is total estimated about 130 million for smallholders division. So in terms of social, we have required the social impact assessment, okay, to be carried out, okay, in MSPO entity. So what happens is that how we also address allegations on social impact, especially in the forced labor and child labor, and also in looking at the engineer people right, also worker welfare. So from our side, okay, MSPO require free prior informed consent, FPIC, okay, to be done for any land development involving indigenous people. And for ESG, okay, or what I call environmental, social, and governance, is a framework to how in assessing how a company perform in 3 areas. So what happens is that MSPO is cover all the criteria here, environment, social, and governance. Okay, so it will be good for palm oil industry to update MSPO, so it's easier for them to so-called comply to the ESG. So moving forward for MSPO is that MPOCC as a scheme owner, we need to do some improvement, okay, to catch up to the improvement or update from the world globally. So first of all, for MPOCC, we have improved our quality management. We already gained our ISO 9001, okay, and currently we go approaching for ABMS, okay, anti-bribery management system, okay, and training. So for standard revision, we have done our standard revision. Our practice is to have every 5 years. I mean, every 5 years we have a standard revision to understand the recent systemic trend and to fit in our principal criteria, especially in Malaysia. Then it's another 2 projects we are going through, the impact framework and also satisfaction score. So we are currently doing study on MSPO impact with relevant expert, academic, and developing a satisfactory score for continuous engagement with the stakeholders. And also from our side, we have improved our complaint grievances, this through our platform, okay, MSPO Trace. Okay. Then also to improve ourselves, we also try to adopt technology. So one of them is to improve in the auditing. Okay, so in terms of this one, we plan to have a system where we can have a consistent audit report covering all the vital detail, okay, agreement, our GPS and question of control. This is to eliminate human error as data communication between applicants through server automation. So it means in the coming years, we're going to have a so-called, instead of auditing doing through paper, we're going to have auditing through a server. So the platform can be using a laptop or using a so-called tablet to input all the information on the auditing report. So it will be real time. Okay. And also we stress to improve our transparency and integrity. So what happened that we're going thinking of how to go to the MSPO Trace platform to go through a transition to become a blockchain. Okay, so do you offer a decentralized and also permanent record, okay, for all the information. And also talking about consumer, okay, and retail ready. So all MSPO certified palm oil can be traced from product to plantation. Okay, this will be using the new standard. Okay, so we hope that we can gain consumer trust as supply chain is transparent. So in here, okay, this is talking about responsible sourcing. Why sustainability matters? Okay, this is one study, okay, showing that okay, sustainability market product okay, who have a better okay grow based on the okay year to 2013. So as you can see here, roughly any sustainability criteria okay or sustainability product, they have better grow okay, compared with the total market or the conventional product. Okay, however, the thing is that you need to invest in sustainability, okay, before you can reap the reward. So normally, what's the challenge in adopting the CSPO? Okay, so one of the things is that because normally people think it's business as usual. Okay, normally business does not really support it until something will affect it, either positive or negative to their bottom line. Okay, so normally we need a mindset shift to work towards sustainable practices and acceptance. Okay, so another thing is for palm oil is because the pricing is quite sensitive. Okay, so all commodities are price sensitive. Okay, however, palm oil is always looked at as the most economical source for oil and fat. Okay, if other edible oil are not subject to the same requirement of sustainability, the margin between palm oil and other edible oil will be smaller. So you shift the demand from palm oil to other commodity. Okay, that is one of the scenario that may happen. Another thing to talk about protectionism, okay, is the key the hindrance, especially in the case of EU, okay, or US, where there is no constraint to adopt MSPO despite effort made. Okay, we only discourage sustainable practice among supplier and manufacturing country that has no regard towards certain material. So what happens that in Malaysia or in the case of MSPO, okay, we have put in the effort trying to be certify the whole Malaysia, but the thing is that there's no recognition from them. Instead, they don't accept MSPO. Okay, yeah. So since MSPO is not globally accepted, okay, so this why this I think it's because of the mainly lack of the awareness, okay, of MSPO, and also industry are not actively seeking their partner to use MSPO as the tool for CSPO trade. Okay, so in the end, who decide which scheme is good? Okay, I mean, who to say that RSPO is better, MSPO or ICC? Okay, so what happens is that as long as we have a strong support from Malaysian industry itself, and also to convince their partner to trade MSPO as a CSPO, I think surely this can be accepted. Okay, normally the first step is the hardest one. So normally we try to import the industry to help implementing MSPO, because at least in terms of the so-called adopting the MSPO standard or solution, it will be done by MPOCC and also the government. So in collaboration, currently, yes, MPOCC have a lot of collaboration with MPOCC, MPOB, MPOCGF, okay, which is for palm oil sector. So we also have a collaboration for Matrade, try to promote MSPO outside Malaysia. And also we have currently collaboration with the China Green Food Development Center, where we try to so-called have a so-called mutual recognition between the China Green Food Certification and also MSPO. In our NGO, yes, we have others NGO that we collaborate with MRF Malaysia in terms of how to talking about comparison benchmark study of MSPO and the other certification standard. Solidarity that we collaborate in the digital project where we promoting smallholder sustainability. Yeah, so currently we still looking at for new partner or potential partner to be a part of MSPO, either to get certified or for collaboration for marketing or for awareness. So conclusion is that for us, sustainability is no longer a buzzword. Okay, it's not a special word for business advantage, but it's the real need actually for palm oil. Okay, because you need to prove to the world now, okay, that we are sustainable. Okay, we can practice, okay, in producing MSP palm oil in a correct way. Okay, so MSPO is not just a government policy anymore, but I hope that it become a strategic commitment to ensure sustainability production in Malaysia's participation on climate change action globally. So MSPO, we address all sustainability concerns through principles and criteria and take great length in improving in every aspect. Okay, especially in how the scheme is designed, how implemented, talking about transparency and integrity. So for us, okay, MSPO, we say we are market ready. We're looking for potential partner. They are looking for responsible sourcing of palm oil. Okay, we try to collaborate in every aspect. okay, with industry and also with other government agencies. Okay, so the message, steady demand is here to stay. Okay, so in all industry or businesses or market, okay, so it's proven to be accelerated growth. Okay, and it's just a matter of time. So what happens that I think for us, time for the business, okay, to plan certain practice into the business plan, and when ready, just please remember the MSPO is ready to work the journey together. Okay, so I think that's all from my presentation. Sorry if I'm not clear because I just recall from my cough. Sorry.
No problem. I think you were very clear. Thank you so much, Mr. Tan, for that very comprehensive introduction to MSPO, as well as the outlook for the future, very hopeful outlook for the future. So we will now move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Harikrishna Kulaveerasingam. So I think if you can please unshare your screen so we can allow for Dr. Hari's slides. In the meantime, I will just give a quick introduction to Dr. Hari. He is the Chief Research and Development Officer for Sime Darby Plantation, Berhad. Prior to joining Sime Darby Plantation, Dr. Hari has been working in academia as well as industry in Malaysia as well as the US. And he has over 30 years postgraduate experience in biotechnology. And he's also a fellow of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. So I would like to now invite Dr. Hari to please give us your presentation. You also have about 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you can see my slides and hear me. Is that okay?
Yes, all good.
All right, okay. I'm going to talk about reimagining plantations, really from more of an industry perspective, right? Industry technology perspective. So essentially what we want to achieve is to improve our productivity. That means increase our yields and so on and so forth without actually increasing or contributing to our carbon footprint and our water footprint, right? And to do all of this in a very sustainable manner, right? So the only way in which this can be done is to actually harness what we call innovation or technology, right? Innovation means repurposing technology for maybe uses that it has not been thought of before, right? So this is the whole pipeline of an oil palm value chain. So from improved planting materials all the way along to the highly traceable, sustainable, high quality oils that we hope to produce to our customers, right? So essentially throughout that whole value chain, there are roles in which technology can play a positive role and achieve a positive outcome. Firstly, improve planting materials by using genomics platforms. This is basically being done by MPOB as well as Sime. Autonomous harvesting machines, I'll show you some examples of that. Robotics, mechanization, the use of drones are now commercially used in many agricultural applications, right? For paddy fields and so on and so forth, and also for point-to-point spraying in oil palm. The use of precision agriculture tools to ensure that all the inputs are efficiently utilized or applied where necessary, right? Through use of either drone images or satellite images, right? Then improve milling processes to enhance the oil extraction rate. So this is already something that is commercially deployed at Sime, which is to use enzymes to enhance oil extraction. And of course, actually utilizing machine learning, IoT, sensors, and so on and so forth to improve the OEE of refining processes, right? So to link this to the SDGs, so this is my interpretation. Of course, the SDGs are very wide, so they can be interpreted in many different ways. But if we look at SDG 8, there are things like mechanization, robotics that actually allow the upskilling of our workforce, allow them to be paid better because they're upskilled and they're highly productive, right? So the automated grabbing tools, automated fertilizer, rat bait dispensing systems also enable us to be a lot more efficient and effective at delivering these inputs without really raising our costs, right? SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So if you think about smart mills and smart refineries, so really you're talking about automated controls, sensors, feedback loops, right? So automated feedback control for management of the oil palm mills, as well as in the refineries, right? To optimize our OEE, right? So all of this is actually achievable and is been deployed in several different industries already. SDG 12, responsible production. So that's GAP, which the gentleman before me was talking about, also is part of MSPO, is good agricultural practice. Integrated pest management, that means to say we only spray chemicals if required, and we look and monitor the pesticide, the pest incidence level, right, before we actually spray. The use of the biocatalyst that I talked to you about in terms of improving oil extraction rate. Our genomics platform allows actually a more responsible production, right? That means higher yields from the same land area. Good manufacturing practices in our mills and our refineries, and mineral oil hydrocarbon controls to minimize mineral oil contamination, 3 MCPD, and all these other undesirable compounds, right? Then you have SDG 13, which is climate action. So from our mills, we have methane production, so that can be harnessed for energy, and it's already being done across the industry. We've developed a novel technology for water treatment. We've already started to implement it in one of our refineries. So it's electro-oxidation technology, basically delivers Class A water. You can actually fix carbon dioxide from your flue stacks by pumping it through a pond with for algae production, and you can reduce your carbon net carbon emission into the environment. And then hydrogen or full power cells, right, for upstream robotics and autonomous solutions. So this one is a bit more in the future, right? So I'd like to share with you one of these machines that we've sort of developed with UPM. It's a semi-autonomous grabber. Let me turn this on, let them start going, right? And you can. So the whole idea about this machine is that normally you need a skilled operator to operate this machine, to operate all the hydraulic controls and so on and so forth. But in this case, it has a camera system and an AI that actually identifies the bunches, and it actually picks and delivers the bunches back into the carriage on its own without intervention from the driver. Meaning to say you can have relatively unskilled individuals actually driving this machine. And we are hoping that we'll be able to encourage locals to come into the industry to actually drive these machines and actually achieve very high productivity rates, right? And they could be working on a shift basis and so on and so forth. So we're hoping that we are able to encourage maybe women to come into the workforce. So I think that is my last slide, right? Yeah. With that, thank you very much. I'd be very happy to answer all kinds of questions that you have for me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hari. That was so interesting, especially the videos. That was really a good touch. Glad to hear what is going on inside Sime Darby, and hopefully we can have a bit more time to discuss that. So we'll move on now to our third speaker of the day, Professor Engineer Dr. Denny. And he is a professor and the head of the School of Engineering and Physical Sciences at Heriot-Watt University, Malaysia. Prof. Denny is, he has great experience in the field of sustainable production, and his areas of specialization include sustainable development and consumption strategies, optimization of sustainable value chain of palm oil, the palm oil industry, energy management, resource conservation, synthesis and analysis of biomass processing, and also integrated biorefineries. And Dr. Denny will talk to us today about the circular economy and what this can do for the palm oil industry. Prof, are you there? Please go ahead. You have 15 minutes.
Thanks, Dr. Helena. Good evening, good morning, days to everyone. Depends on where you are. Thanks for the introduction. So today what I'm going to do a quick sharing about circular economy promotes sustainable palm oil research. And I'm Denny, I'm from Harvard University, and I'm also currently the chair for Malaysia Academic Research on Sustainable Palm Oil Sustainability. So just before I start, let me introduce a little bit about ARPOS, because this is the webinar that we are jointly organized between ICAME, POPSIG, which is the Palm Oil Sustainable SDGs, as well as ARPOS network. So I was elected as the chairperson for this ARPOS network, and it is a network that bringing researchers from different parts of the universities to work together to address sustainable palm oil productions. So our mission is really working with all the policymakers and being a natural parties citing any of the parties. We are providing some scientific evidence to societies to prove how can we ensuring that we have a sustainable production of palm oil. And then, like I mentioned, we are working with myself and Helena from different backgrounds, and engineering, biosciences, and everyone to really do research related to palm oil, in particularly in Malaysia. So we have created a lot of engagement with different networks and also representing researchers in the country in various policy making process to ensure that we are providing scientific evidence to ensure that we are contributing to the national development in particularly on this palm oil sustainable development. So we have members from various universities. So for those who are known in Malaysia, those are the listed universities that we have in Malaysia. So we welcome any parties who are interested in joining us. We organize activities, and also, like I mentioned, we are leading some of the initiatives in MPOCC. In particularly, we are one of the technical committee in the MSPO standard development. So we work, we collaborate, we contribute, bringing all the knowledge that we have from the scientific community to the industry, to the stakeholders, to the policy making process. So let's go beyond a little bit on what our process. Now I'd like to highlight to all of you talking about what sustainable palm oil productions and how circular economy can actually drive a very important agenda for us. So I think you were listening to the first speaker just now was mentioning about circular economy, reduction of waste, and so on and so forth. They have a lot of schemes or guidance documents coming in to facilitate the stakeholders. How can we improve the sustainability of the industries? So let me go a bit of background studies on what is circular economy. And most of our industry are actually based on linear economy model, where you take from the resources naturally, make it into a product, and then eventually by the end of life of your product, you actually dispose it. While circular economy is based on circularity of the productions, we generate products from the waste products or byproducts from some of the industry, reuse them, recycle them, and then reuse them within the entire industry or within the entire economy. By doing so, we can reduce the fresh resources consumptions, at the same time also minimizing the waste into the landfill area. So circular economy is not a new concept. It has been implemented in quite a different industry. For example, Cisco is one of the champion in telco industries in the globally. So there has been talking about how do we implement circular economy model to reduce the waste that they have been within their productions. So they're also thinking about new way of thinking, redesigning their products. How can we minimizing the waste and recycle some of the products that they can have back into their own value chain? So they have a lot of works that has been done talking about targeting 100% recovery of their products, consume their cost, the products that they design, and so on and so forth. Other than the Cisco, we also have Unilever, one of the mega products. I think both of us know Unilever quite well. So they have different products in our home. I think you know their brand much more than just Unilever as a global brand. So they have been also promised to reduce their plastics that they have usage within their industries, and then trying to use more plastics, recycled plastics in their packaging materials. Also, they start thinking about new packaging material, new packaging model to reduce the plastic waste, that plastics consumption within the entire value chain of the Unilever. So what I'm trying to explain here is really look into palm oil perspective. How can we palm oil industry to be more sustainable and based on the circular economy model? I think palm oil, all of us know vegetable, palm oil is the largest vegetable oils in the world. It cannot be replaced with any oils in the world because we are just don't have sufficient land. If we want to replace palm oil with any other crops, then you actually require more than 10 times of the land to feed the world. Therefore, it is important for us to make our industry more sustainable instead of thinking about replacing the industry with other crops. In Malaysia in particularly, you can see that we have palm oil is actually the fourth exports value in the country since 2020. And 2021, we actually recorded up to 64 billions ringgit of worth of exports value. It actually showed this is a very significant industry in the country. It's not something just say we don't want palm oil and replace it. It actually that doesn't the right directions. We actually think about how can we make this industry more sustainable. And I'm sure there are a lot of good work has been done. And you can hear from Dr. Harry just now, some have lit a lot of interest area. They're actually enhancing the productivity, improving the sustainability, not looking at only economic, also as ESG and so on and so forth. MPOCC launch MSPO standard is also one of the very greatest initiatives of the country to ensure that our industry is practicing as a sustainable manner. So palm oil, I mean, this is one of the largest agriculture industry. We have planted about 5.7 million hectares of land. We are going to have a cap in the land area expansions, just primarily protecting our forest reserve in the country. So just give a bit of those who are not knowing what is palm oil, how it can come up. It's actually come up a tree, and then we harvest the fruit. From the fruit, we can get the fruitlet, we get the oil. And then once we get the oil, we can refine it into edible oil, soup, margarine, lubricants, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, we generate a lot of biomasses. And those biomasses that I mentioned, I think from the first speakers, we're talking about new standards launching, tracking all these biomasses. Why this is important? Because this actually contribute a large volume of the biomasses generated every day in the country based on the exports that we have and generations of the oil in the country. So in general, the whole supply chain can be divided into three components. One is the plantations, upstream, midstream, which is the processing and the refinery, and also the transportation. How do we transport it? Because it actually involves the whole sustainability of the whole value chain. So in agriculture, we have the processing, as I said just now, you produce EFP, mesocarp fiber, palm kernel shell, palm, and in the refinery, you have producing sulfur and so on and so forth. So this is all the products or byproducts that have been generated in the industry of palm oil. So in order for us to build this industry in a circular model, we need to first identify these as the sources. How can we utilize these sources and recover those sources? So, and we need to know this is a huge amount that we are talking about every year. So you can imagine that we are processing about 100 million tons of FFB per day. So this is million tons a year, sorry. So this is the amount of mass that we are talking about generating yearly. So we have this waste can be generated or be utilized to biorefinery concept to convert all this biomass into different products. So we can have physical platforms, we have biological platforms, biochemical platform, chemical platform, producing different various products. It can be fiber, pellet can be used for energy productions, we get fertilizer, bioethanol, char, and so on and so forth. So this is really give us a wide spectrum of products that we can generate from the waste or byproducts that we have in the palm oil industry. So this is the list of compilations of the products that I mentioned, but this is just one of those selected. There are many more research going on at the ground now to convert all these biomasses into valuable other products. So in order for us to really think about circular economy model in this biomass processing or palm oil industries, we need to think about how can we recover those biomasses or those materials that we have identified just now being part of the industry or being go into the beyond other industries. So like I said, in a linear economy, you take the fruits, process it, generate biomass, wastewater, dispose it. And at the same time, you actually extract energy or resources from the other parts of the world to support the operation of the entire industries. So this will generate a lot of carbon emissions and also causing a lot of costs that involve. But then at the same time, we noted that all these biomasses that we have identified or material that we have identified can be further converted into different products. Therefore, we come up with this circular economy by introducing covering all this material back into the self-industry to reduce the fresh consumption of the resources or natural resources. And then we can bring out the whole cost of the operations. So we're using an integrated bio concept whereby you're using a different biomass, different pathway, using energy system, producing different high-value chemicals and energy to support the entire operation of the system. Other than looking at the whole refinery or biorefinery within the whole processing Leng only, we can also thinking about producing fertilizer feedback into the upstream, where you can reduce the fertilizer or straight fertilizer consumption from the plantations and so on and so forth. And this is not only limited into our own industry, we can start thinking about other industry applications. So this is one of the latest project that I'm involved and leading with my students is really looking at what is the impact of palm oil industry beyond our own palm oil industries. So we actually look at biorefinery concepts, and then we also integrating into CHP system, wastewater treatment, pulp and paper, mattress, polymer, and so on and so forth. We can supply those material into other industry, and it's going to impact the entire industry by reducing the resources that are required into the respective industries. So we do a case study with integrating all these biomasses, all these potential application of all the material that we have generated from the palm oil industries, and then connecting with furniture industry, pulp and paper, polymer, and so on and so forth. So we bring the whole industry together, looking at different pathway, and then biological pathway, chemical pathway, physical pathway, chemical pathway, and so on and so forth, to really bring it the whole value chain together and understanding the impact of one another. So if we change the processing upstream, what is going to impact on the downstreams, and what are the minimum waste that generations or resources are required to produce the products that we have across the different industries. So we have a lot of also not only looking at material, we also look at energy integrations. How do we connect the energy consumptions or transportation of the materials as well? So in order for us to really achieving sustainable production of palm oil, we not only looking at our own industry, we need to look at the whole circular economy model beyond our own industries. And then we have involved multiple industry, multiple technology. So the whole value chain can then be optimized based on carbon emissions that achieving net zero. Just now you were hearing from the first speakers talking about the net zero. Yes, we need to achieve net zero by 2050. How? I think the pathway is we need to consider all the systems together, all the industry together, waste minimizing the waste generations, enhancing the probability, and make sure our product is more compatible. And that's my also addressing some of the questions I mentioned just now. What is going to impact if our oil price has dropped? So having such integration will able to address some of the issues on stabilizing the cost or the selling price of the products. And also we can enhancing the sustainability or social aspect for the whole industry. So I will stop here for a while and then happy to address any further questions during the conversation later. Thank you. Dr. Helena, back to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thanks for that. Really a very great overview of what's happening both in the research and development part, as well as how it's been applied to the industry. So now we will move on to our final speaker for the panel session, Mr. Galau Melayong, and he is the Head of Sustainability at Sarawak Oil Palms Berhad. Mr. Galau is also the subcommittee chairman of SOPOA, which is the Sarawak Plantation Owners Association for Sustainability and Certifications. And he's also an active member of the MSPO Technical Working Group as well as Expert Working Group. So Mr. Galau will give us sort of a case study of his company in what they are doing towards the SDGs. Please go ahead, Mr. Galau, you have 15 minutes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Thank you, Dr. Helena, for the introduction. And I think my presentation will be made easier because all the technical part have been explained by the three previous expert speakers. So basically mine will be rather close to home or rather close to the plantation. So my how we, SOPB for that matter, or the industry in general, contribute to SDG. Okay. My presentation will be I'll explain how the oil palm industry contribute to achieving SDG, and basically specific to SOPB commitment and targets, how we align ourselves to the Sustainability Development Goal. And my reference will be all the detail actually is in our annual report 2021 from page 36 to 41 if you need more detail. And I'll speak in a bit more detail of the 11 SDG adopted by the group, and I'll conclude with how it relates to the public in general. Okay, the contribution of the oil palm industry is when the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal were adopted in 2015, as mentioned earlier. Essentially is a clear call for countries and societies and for that matter companies to create sustainable future where poverty would be eliminated, standard of health and education would improve, and continuous economic growth can be achieved and sustained, while the challenge of climate change could be addressed and tackled. For SOP, I will go into one by one the list of our commitment, and our contribution basically is, I can also say that it is generally the plantation players in the industry, the oil palm plantation, how we contribute to the United Nations Development Goal. This is a brief overview, starting from goal number 1, no poverty, goal number 2, zero hunger and quality education, where I believe with the contribution or the achievement of goal 1, 2, and 4, it contribute to the overall good health and well-being of human population. And of course, in the processing facilities, we talk about how we achieve affordable and green energy and overall decent work growth. And I will be talking about goal 12, 13, and 15. I'll go into that detail. Okay. So I think this has been made easier for me. Everybody know now what is Sustainable Development Goal. Let me just close this. The first of the goal are I group it into 4. Let me see how can, sorry. Okay, now. Okay, no poverty, zero hunger, quality education, and decent work and economic growth. As mentioned by, I think, Dr. Helena, SDG is a very wide, topic. Even communities or companies contribute in different ways. So this is our little ways, rather on the ground in the estate or on the company level, how we contribute to SDG in terms of no poverty, zero hunger, quality education, and decent work growth. You see, in our, for any plantation companies, you have to comply with the law. In terms of wages, you have to comply with minimum wage, which conform to national legislation. And the local communities around the group constitution area benefit from access road built by any, not just SOP, in any other plantation company as well, where those communities surrounding our constitution area or any plantation area have the opportunity to develop their own land with cash crop, especially like oil palm, and sell it to any palm oil mill nearby. And at the same time, plantation companies also train local communities on the know-how and skills in oil palm plantation. This is an ongoing thing, and we can say it's achieved. But at the same time, as long as the plantation operation is there, it is an ongoing thing. And also the local communities are also provided with opportunities to work in the palm plantation and mills and train so as to acquire the necessary skill. So with this thing is the palm oil industry contribute to no poverty, zero hunger, and quality education at the same time provide decent work and economic growth to the surrounding community. So as I mentioned earlier, with the achievement of the first 4 goals that I mentioned, and it contributes to increase health and well-being for people of all ages. Because by having this economic activity of oil palm planting, is providing more efficient funding to health system, improve sanitation, increase access to healthcare, and reducing pollution. Significant progress is expected. And I think in Sarawak, for that matter, it can come to million, and for the whole of Malaysia, millions of people are involved in the industry. As I mentioned earlier, in this black font here, brings crucial development to rural area. Villages have to, before this, where there was no access road, villages have to travel miles to their nearest clinic. With oil palm infrastructure and facilities such as clinics set up, it gives the local communities easier access to healthcare. So combined with earning from plantation, which allowed them to get better food, nutrition, they also enjoy greater well-being. And so this contribute to goal number 3, which is good health and well-being. And so the detail is there. I think I don't have to go through, but I'd like to point out that in-house and for any company, plantation company for that matter, for the well-being of the employee, we provide free PPE or personal protective equipment. And of course, the company have a safety and health policy where you need to have a plan or rather a policy to accomplish zero fatalities in your operation, possibly. And you have to conduct internal and external safe operating procedure. This is contribute to the good health of well-being for the internal or rather the employee of the company. And for SOP, I think, and for most other company, plantation company, we have established clinic in operational unit. We produce our own clinics where we employ HA to give free medical treatment to all our employees. And I think we all know that the recent COVID-19, we also provide make it possible for all our employee, including immigrant or the outside employee like from Indonesia. They also given free COVID-19 vaccination and and free swab to enable early detection to reduce transmission within our operation. At the same time, we have outreach or CSR. One of it is Vision Care, where this program carried out in collaboration with various government agencies to provide medical practitioner to provide free screening and eye check-up to the children and elderly. These are one of the things that we do. Of course, there are other projects like Young Achievement Award, where we give assistance in terms of finance or material to families from surrounding our area in the study. Okay, for affordable and clean energy, yeah, I think it's mentioned very clear, very in detail by the last two speakers, I guess, Dr. Harry and Prof. Denny. To reduce GHG emission, that is by installation of methane capture at the mill, where for us, we have 7 mills. We have, by the end of this year, we would have filled 6 or rather installed 3. And in the next 2 years, we will have all our mills fixed with methane capture facilities. So this is a way of contributing to SDG. Of course, by legally, you have to install electrostatic precipitator in your mill and refinery. This is to reduce dust emission to the surrounding, pollution, so that you can reduce pollution in your operational area. And for sustainable cities and communities, I guess it's communities here. We have, as I mentioned earlier, provide free electricity and water supply and consistently upgrade our living condition to keep all employee residents in good and basic condition. And then responsible consumption and production. I think this is one of those 3 P's in sustainability. In terms of profit, you have to be responsible. It has to be responsibly produced. I guess one of it later, which I will explain in a bit, is no deforestation, no pit and no exploitation, which is one of the best practice that is being adopted by the industry. And of course, operationally in the mill, benchmark OER/KR performance with industry peers, and at the refinery, produce higher value product and certification. All our operational unit, free estate, mills and refineries, all MSPO certified as of since 2019 actually. So these are responsible consumption and protection, because once you have this in place, basically it relates to climate action, where the group have oil palm sustainability policy, commonly known as no deforestation, no pit and no exploitation policy, which is in short NDPE. These are, I think, explained by the earlier 2 gentlemen also, that we are not expanding or increasing our production by going into new areas, but rather improve your present estate or mill, so that you can still produce responsibly, so that you can save, without further developing or rather clearing more forests. At the same time, with this policy, all our suppliers are also expected to comply. This was launched in 2019, and we clearly told our suppliers, our oil palm product suppliers, that anything planted after 2019 will have to go through, certain requirement, which is well documented now in the new MSPO 2022, where you need to go through HCV assessment, and you can only plant where there is less low carbon or rather it's not SCV area. So this is one of the our contribution in terms of climate action. And I think also mentioned by the previous speaker, biodiesel, which release lower level of pollutant and greenhouse gas compared to fossil fuels. We also produce biodiesel at a refinery in Bintulu. And in terms of, I think, circular economy, we also any front or empty fruit bunches or meal byproducts are recycled and applied back to the field. And at the same time, I think nowadays they are buyers for your meal end product like kernel shell or this that is not just disposed as waste, but reuse as a source of energy rather. And goal 15 is life on land. I think it's also related to the NDPE just now. No deforestation and no exploitation. But at the same time, we have conservation project. One is in running, which is in Timbarap conservation area. You can get the detail here on our website, where we do a baseline study of what is inside that area that we are not planting, because from our assessment, that area also have high conservation value. So we need to enrich it, not just the trees and even the animals, the inside there. So we have ongoing studies. So this is one of our contribution to life on land. And then goal 17, partnership for goal. Basically, there are two groups that we partner with. One is our suppliers, where we, as I mentioned earlier, with the launch of our NDPE policy, they have to comply with what is stated in there, that you cannot clear any more forested land. So we partner with them, and at the same time with smallholders, we actively assist our suppliers, including smallholders, to comply with our sourcing policy, which is, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot clear more land, and you have to be MSPO certified. And these are some of these conditions already what need to be complied with if you want to be a supplier with SOP. And we actively engage with them so that they comply. But at the same time, we don't just cut them off, but bring them together so that they understand what is our intention, our goal in putting up those policy. Okay, to conclude, I guess I'm just jumping the gun here, maybe. There are, of course, with what we have done, like in our present, we contribute to SDG goal. There are also calls for boycott to palm oil, which, as I mentioned earlier, I think palm oil is the best alternative, where it's the highest yielding available crop, and it has elevated properties among rural growers, as I mentioned earlier. And economic reliance on palm oil in the region is very widespread. I think those are the different that I picked it from. And because on the other hand, for us, we need to weigh out the losses of biodiversity and related ecosystem. So that's why we put up policies and procedure to reduce our carbon footprint data, and to again, you have to balance this. Stepping outside this argument, we need to find resolution and pragmatic advance. We have to plan and get our palm development, basically our suppliers and our even the smallholders, so that they get the greatest benefit and the least harm to the environment. And at the same time, local producers they have, and the local the tropical people like Malaysia, Indonesia are producing, but at the same time, most of it is exported to Europe or to the temperate countries. So you have to find a middle point to understand each other, address the gap, and understand the ethic of palm oil production. Find a safe framework for development involving oil palms. So this is my conclude remarks. With that, I would like to share I am very close to my heart to saying, this overcome poverty, I think this is according to Nelson Mandela. Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice. I really agree with this. And for the young people out there, the engineers or the participant, when we help people in the operation, it's not, it's not charity. It's really act of justice. You have to be fair. And at the same time, please inherit this earth from our ancestors. We actually borrow it from our children. This is according to the Native American. With that, I thank you, and I will be happy to get questions after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Galau, as well as for leaving us with those very meaningful quotes. We will now move on to our discussion forum, and we have about 50 minutes on this, so we have quite a lot of time to dig our teeth into these things. So I will be joined with Ms. Khor Leng, who is here. And let me just introduce Ms. Leng briefly. She is the research head for SDGs Advisors, which is based in Southeast Asia. So she is the senior economic consultant working on trade competitive landscape studies on all kinds of commodities: palm oil, rubber, pulpwood, timber, biomass, renewable fuels, and other agribusiness. And she has led multiple political, economic, and ESG studies for the European Commission, ASEAN, and all other clients. So Ms. Leng will be joining us, and both of us, we have prepared some questions for the panel. And just a note here, if there is any particular question that we pose and any of the panel in particular would like to answer that, please raise your hand function, so we will know definitely to call upon you. We may not call upon every speaker for every question, so please let us know if you particularly want to answer any particular question. With that, we can start on to our Q&A. We might take some from the Q&A list by the participants, but we'll see how that goes. And I would like to give the honor of the first question to Leng, please.
Thank you, Helena, and thank you to all these speakers. I think we've heard very well how palm oil has been moving on SDGs, ESG, sustainability, as well as co-products and value add. So I think a lot of congratulations to everyone in the palm oil industry. And if I may just go back to our headline topic of the UN SDGs, just to mention where we're at. Essentially, this is really a multi-year strategy. I think everyone is also familiar with UN Global Compact to drive business awareness and action in support of the SDGs by 2030. So now we're at 2022, so it's not that far to go. It's already been 20 years, another 8 years of the target. Maybe just a little bit of a wake-up call, I suppose, from UN Global Compact. They're saying take action is not enough. Implementation metrics, I'll just emphasize metrics, are quite weak after 20 years. And there are too few SDG goals are targeted. There's some sort of cherry picking. So this is not specific to palm oil, but it is a general finding on UN SDGs from UN Global Compact. So I think it's just a wider sort of reminder to everyone about broadening the goals and finding metrics. And I think, if I may, just to observe, is that I feel that palm oil has done many things. Obviously, there is an issue of, worry that goalposts are changing. But of course, I think everyone in here in academia and science knows that it's always about continuous improvement. So I think nobody is surprised about that. But I guess it's maybe, I don't know whether it's a philosophical or practical question. Are we moving harder with greater urgency to basically report better metrics and expand the coverage on UN SDG matters to come? I think it's arguably it's been 20 years of talking and pledges. And I think maybe we're now at the stage of measurable, because we are also in the era where greenwash is very much, the headline sort of topic as well. So it's a bit wide. Sorry, I mean, Helena, maybe you can help focus it.
Yeah, so would anyone like to respond to that? I think basically what Leng is trying to get at is, should we really be looking more into specific metrics and also to expand the coverage of the SDGs in the future so that we can better address it in a more concrete manner. So would anyone like to try? Perhaps we can start with Mr. Tan in the MPOCC's kind of perspective, a larger perspective.
Okay, thank you, Helena. Well, in MPOCC, we're looking forward into so-called transforming the Malaysian palm oil industry, okay, especially for its sustainability. Okay, so as you know, MSPO started in year 2013. Okay, at that time we are voluntary. Okay, so what means that our emphasis at that time is still to be inclusive. Okay, especially towards the smallholders. Okay, so how we look at it is that, okay, the sustainability criteria, SDG, okay, doesn't have to be the big player game only. Okay, so instead we try to so-called escalate it, okay, or trickle it down to the normal people, okay, and hope that through, okay, MSPO, they can have more understanding on what is this sustainability talking about, especially in the global context. Okay, so for MSPO, okay, we have starting from 2013, we just have our first so-called MSPO revision. Okay, so what happens that we look at the stepwise approach in that. Okay, so in terms of matrices, okay, what happens that we must look at not just in the global context, but how we apply all these criteria to local demographic conditions. Okay, this is what we're doing here. So what means that in here, we try to get as much, okay, so-called consultation with all the stakeholders, especially the local stakeholders. Okay, look at how they want Malaysia palm oil to be seen. Okay, how we can progress. Okay, how we can change from a so-called conventional oil palm producer into somewhat as the whole industry transform itself moving forward into sustainability. In terms of sustainability, we don't just talking about environment, talking not about social, but we talk about so-called the people itself. Okay, yeah. So normally, okay, one advantage we say in MSPO is talking about smallholders. Okay, where we cater for it. Okay, what happens that instead of we trying to promote MSPO, okay, at the start we try to make sure there is supply. I mean, make sure the industry is there. Okay, at least take a first step. Okay, in MSPO. So after that, okay, then when the whole at least country nearly certified, we start to say, okay, we have the supply, we have the basis, we show to the world what we achieve, what effort put by the government, the private sector, by the smallholders, okay, in achieving sustainability through MSPO. Okay, so later on, okay, then we start to do promotion. Okay, but later on, we think we can find a way how to study this impact. Okay, because yes, some people talk about jurisdiction approach. Correct. Okay, where the government put effort, but in terms of MSPO, you can see that, okay, even though you don't call it jurisdiction approach, but it is a national agenda, it's a national policy where, okay, there's a drive from the government, okay, to incorporate all the sustainability in the whole industry. Okay, okay, we are one of the first country to go for a mandatory scheme. Okay, which at that time a lot of people were skeptical. Okay, but I think, okay, through all this journey, we show that, okay, it can happen. Okay, and it happened in terms of Malaysian way, the Malaysian mode. Okay, so in terms of other thing, how is cascaded? I mean, yeah, we have this UN 70 value, but as you go down, okay, we can see that it involves a lot of things. Okay, it's interrelated. Okay, when we talk about smallholders, okay, we can talk about education, because they educate them in sustainability. Then you make sure that, okay, they are well above the poverty line, because we're hoping with this MSPO, their crops, okay, will get acceptance. Okay, it's a certain market in the EU where it's sensitive towards environment, social, everything. So I think this is some of my so-called idea, opinion of that. Okay, so maybe what we talk is quite a lot. Okay, I think yeah, this is what I can share for now.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to share? Maybe Dr. Hari, do you put up your hand?
Yes, I did, and I took it down. Okay, but anyway, maybe change perspective a bit, widen the scope, right? We know that now Bank Negara requires all lenders to actually or certain restrictions to be imposed on all these financial agencies, right? All the banks and all that, they have to actually adhere to the SDGs. So for example, if I were to go to the bank and I wanted to, let's say, mine coal and dirty coal on top of it, more than likely the bank will not lend me the money, because it will fall out of those SDG criteria, right? That that has been imposed on all the banks. So I think I see things in a more positive light, because I reckon that there's, once you tighten up on the finances, everybody has to comply, right? So you have, on one hand, as my colleague there from MPOCC has mentioned about the regulations, right, that is being put in place by the country, so to speak. Then you have the financial sector actually being regulated to a certain extent to behave themselves accordingly, according to those criteria, right? Then I believe that, most industries will then be forced to comply and to actually deliver sustainable outcomes, right, that fit into those UN SDGs, right? Anyway, those are my views. Yeah. Not sure what other people think.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add, Prof. Denny or Mr. Galau on this?
Okay, maybe I can come in here now. Thanks for the interesting question. It's a very big questions that you are putting us on this. It's a very multi-dimensional approach that we are talking about, because it's no one size fits all. We cannot use one solutions and apply it to all the smallholders, all the big players, because they're just different in nature. If you look at the SDG goal as the discussions, it's really looking at how do we reduce poverty. We actually look at down on the ground, how do we support people just fighting with poverty. And also we are on the other high end where we are talking about protecting the environment. So how do we expanding the metrics? It will be difficult for some stakeholders, just like, for example, smallholders. They're just not affordable to do any further assessment or protecting environment kind of strategy. However, they are really, the industry is providing them the food for them and living, and providing them a job to actually sustain their lifestyle, or even the life that they have within the small community. I think when we look at this big SDG on all more metrics coming in, we need to look at individual stakeholders category. We cannot have one size and then pushing to all everyone, and then everyone is doing everything, and then it will eventually fail. So therefore, I think we need to customize. We need to look at individual stakeholders. How can we support the SDG in different manners? Some of them might be looking at fighting the hungers, because we are providing the food for the people. Some of them might be strategically look at how do we protect the environment. But entirely, I think the MSPO or even ISPO or RSPO, they're actually setting a certain level of expectation for us not to destroying the environment or not destroying the other parts of the community while expanding our own features. I think that are the things that we are still need to work together. So all these matrices is good. I think there are multiple matrices has been introduced in terms of water footprint, carbon footprint, land footprint. There are so many matrices available in the market. It's which one that suit to which. We really need to look at that individually, and then also look at strategically on a certain location, certain community doesn't want to really push everything to everyone, and that will actually make the whole system fail in the end. So that's probably my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll move on to the next question, and I think I would like to call upon Pak Galau first for this. When we sort of zoom out, we've been talking about the palm oil industry, and we sort of move out to compare the palm oil industry in Malaysia to others, right? So, for example, if we compare against other vegetable oils, other commodities, and also when we compare, for example, Malaysia and our neighbor Indonesia. Perhaps I would like to hear from the panelists, what do they think in terms of where does Malaysia stand and where does palm oil stand in terms of SDGs? And also connected to that, is there a need for us to sort of collaborate with either our neighboring producers or with other vegetable oils towards achieving our SDG goals? Mr. Galau first, perhaps? You are muted.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, now I guess from a upstream perspective, already a man on the ground. I think all the gentlemen here and panelists, are more exposed than me in that sense. But I'm a man more on the ground. To me, when you talk about SDG and how it relates to oil palm, to me, palm oil or oil palm is important source of livelihood. You see, but the problem with oil palm, I mean, is the issue is really unsustainable practices. First, it comes up with, I mean, the buyer or either the competitor, if you call them, they want us to stop, expanding. No more forests to be cleared. I guess that is a good point in there, because we have so much land, I mean, so much oil palm area already, like now 5.7 mentioned by one of the speakers. I guess it's 5.8, or somebody said it's 6 million hectare. You see, yeah, we have stopped. Basically, the MSPO want us to stop, and SOP as a company, as a responsible company, also have stopped spending, and we extend that to our suppliers. So I guess in the international context, it's just that we are more exposed, and we are open to criticism. But most of the criticism, I feel personally, is good. Yeah, you don't need to clear more forest. You just have to improve your production. And then now it go into detail of forced labor. To me, the oil palm industry, as mentioned earlier, is a source of livelihood. It's just everybody got to toe the line. It start off with, I think, MPOCC or rather the government have done a good job in making MSPO mandatory. I wouldn't want to compare us with other oil palm crop. I think Prof have explained very clearly just now where we should be heading. Those are well thought of, but you really have people on the ground. We just have to listen, because at the end of the day, 90% of our product are export. Only 10% is consumed locally. So we really have to pull our stock up, I mean, if you want to put it that way. So, but at the same time, palm oil contribute to economic growth. Then we have to, the competitor or whoever is out there must also hear our point of view. What we have done is alleviate poverty, enhance food security, and long-term employment opportunity. So these are the positive points that we have done. And I think we have repeat over and over again, I guess, MPOCC, MPOCC have done all this. So really have, at the end of the day, we have to strategize. I mean, how we're going to move forward. I think Dr. Helena talk about how we can collaborate moving forward to face all the challenges that is coming. So I think that's my point of view in that in this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Galau. Maybe Dr. Hari would like to add in the comparative perspective from your view at Sandabi.
Well, I think basically the customer is always right. Okay, so if the customer has demanded for certain, let's say, quality or certain outcomes to be upfront, then we really need to comply, right? And I agree with my colleague from SOPB that at the end of the day, there are, let's say, those operators who basically follow what they preach now, right? They all walk the talk, right? And there are others who perhaps would clear cut forests and stuff like that, right? Which is basically goes against all the regulations, and they can't hide anymore, because all of this data can be imaged from satellites and so on and so forth from 1995 onwards, right? I mean, there are images that go before 1995, but essentially they've been tracking it every year, right? So you can see if there are any areas that are opened up that were not open in the past. So you can't turn around and say, sorry, I did not touch this forest or anything, it was done many years ago, and now I've come in here and I purchased it and I planted this stuff. So all of that would not hold water anymore, and MSPO can take them to task, and similarly with RSPO as well, right? So that there are, and the customers as well, right? Because the customers also have line of sight to all these things. So the requirements actually on producers today is so stringent that we need to comply to all the regulations and so on and so forth, plus what our customers request from us, right? And I would also agree with my colleague from Sarawak that it's actually a good thing. It makes us better, right? It cannot make us worse. It makes us better. And I believe the oil palm industry is much further along, or much healthier, if you like to put it that way, compared to, let's say, some of our competitors, because they have not been under this kind of scrutiny. And we've had to clean up our act, and you can see, I mean, we have all these mandates that are rolled out, right? Which is part and parcel of what even smallholders have to follow. So I don't think any other, besides Indonesia and Malaysia, I don't think any other country can actually state that. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much. And I wonder if Mr. Tan wants to add a bit more to that. What is MSPO or MPOCC's view on this?
Well, sorry. Okay. Well, in MPOCC, we always try to so-called looking at how MSPO can be so-called recognized by the market. Okay, so what happens is that we say that this is a homegrown initiative, correct? Okay, we want to be inclusive. Okay, so what happens is that we be open. What happens is that we really encourage, others so-called bodies to look at MSPO standard, and also try to look at how MSPO is implemented in Malaysia. Okay, so what happens that by doing this, what happens that to show our so-called openness to them, okay, we never string. We may say no. Okay, so every time any delegation come to Malaysia, we always try to engage them. Okay, what happens that we believe by engaging them, okay, and letting them know the real scenario in Malaysia, okay, it can break this kind of so-called negative perception, actually about the Malaysian palm oil. Okay, so another thing is that yes, when MSPO was implemented as mandatory, okay, a lot of people saying that it's a greenwash, okay, because the word mandatory is mainly coming from the government. Okay, so what is there are a lot of people at that time is very skeptical. MSPO. Actually, they say MSPO is something that is put by the government just to so-called make palm oil look better. Okay, because this is what I get. Okay, earlier, okay, when MSPO was trying to be implemented. So when you say mandatory, a lot of people is skeptical. Okay, they're saying that it's not going to work. Okay, so I mean, MPOCC or the government will cut corner. Okay, all this thing was thrown to us. Okay, but we preserve. Okay, we continue with our effort. Okay, as time go by, okay, the achievement you can see with the how much we have managed to certify. Okay, as of today, we need to certify 97% of the whole planted area in Malaysia, totaling 5.5 million hectares. Currently, if I know for smallholders, okay, based on MPO data, is roughly 70% have been certified. Now, we acknowledge the smallholder is still not 100% certified, and we acknowledge the issue. Okay, it's not really a land issue. Okay, talking about so why by all this we does not cover it up. We tell the world the truth. Yes, some smallholder because of the so-called what they have last time. Okay, maybe from their legacy issue. There's no legality is not in place yet, but doesn't mean that we have to exclude them. Instead, okay, with the so-called help from MPOB, their tunnel officer, through their program, Sustainable Palm Oil Cluster, what happens is that we're trying to engage with the state government on how to rectify this sort of thing. So instead of, looking at another way, letting them just be it and closing the gate for them to coming into sustainability, we help them. Okay, so it means there's a government effort in helping the smallholder in terms of legality. First of thing, talk about legality first. Okay, so make sure that the land owned by the smallholder are legally. Okay, if some issue, then we talk to the state government and how to make sure this smallholder can continue to survive in oil palm and legalize what have done. Okay, legality can be not saying that they steal the land. It's just that maybe they don't understand how the proper way of the legality, if land legal regulation work. Okay, so we assist them. So it means we go to ground. Okay, we show to people how we can slowly change the landscape. Okay, like I said just now. What we do, even though the certification is like based on entity, but how implement it like a landscape approach. Okay, we doesn't let anyone behind. Okay, any issue we try to solve with the relevant stakeholders or government agency. So there's like something I would like to say that MPOCC in a very unique situation. Okay, we are scheme bodies. Yes, we are scheme bodies, but a scheme owner, but we have the link to government agency, which we can give our input to the policy maker on how to make sure that this sustainability can implemented in the ground. Okay, so I think this is one of the uniqueness of MPOCC. I mean, we are scheme owner, we engage with industry. We also have a link to the government where we can become the so-called intermediate, to all the factors they needed to make sure sustainability can happen in oil palm industry or palm oil industry.
Thank you so much. I would like to call upon Leng now to offer a question to the panelists.
Okay, thanks very much. And maybe I'll just I think emphasize as well from a market perspective is that I think what we're seeing is the whole voluntary approaches are now, well, I think it's going to be supplemented sometimes superseded by regulatory. And I think what has been mentioned about MSPO and MPOCC is terribly important, because I think this is going to be a huge enabler for a smallholder and small producer palm oil to places like the EU, where in the past it has relied on, just on voluntary standards, which have been a bit expensive and tough to achieve. So I think this transition more into a regulatory realm is what we're seeing, whether it's from markets like EU for due diligence coming ahead, or whether it's Indonesia on labor rights implementations, that's also facing Malaysia. And in addition to places like the US. So we're seeing the regulatory realm really coming up very, very strong now. So I think, thank you for noting on that from MPOCC. And I think the industry will have a good regard for that going forward, actually, that this has been happening. And I think this just goes into exactly sort of my next question, actually, but, that really the regulatory side is really breathing down the necks of the industry. And this is not just from, I suppose in a way, Malaysia side pushing on regulatory, buyer side, international buyers also doing so, whether it's countries or companies, and even suppliers of labor. I mentioned Indonesia, we also have Bangladesh, Nepal, increasing all their labor protection standards going forward. So it's really coming in from all sorts of directions right now. And maybe if you don't mind, Helena, because I know time is getting a bit shorter, but maybe I could just jump to the sort of final question, because I think the issue on regulatory has been, I think, quite well covered with the MPOCC's comment. But I think one of the things going ahead will be this, what was mentioned by Prof. Denny as well, carbon footprints, right? Could people share with us how Malaysia might look like? Because we talked about widening the metrics and providing more data, but I also feel from a political econs viewpoint, we're even going to snap back to one metric, carbon footprint. And is that going to correlate with every other ESG thing going on right now? And how is Malaysia palm oil or Malaysia palm products going to look like in carbon footprint terms? Because recall that markets like the EU are going to introduce carbon border tax adjustments, and as well as us having competitors. Indonesia is a competitor supplier, Thailand, Colombia, and others. And some of these places, at least from the upstream, are coming in where it's from the conversion of pasture, cattle pasture land, to palm oil. So your feedstock is going to have a different carbon footprint coming forward. So can we get some comments? I mean, I know this is a snapback to one measure. I hate it, but it might be that. It might come to that. Carbon footprint, water footprint. What are we facing?
Prof. Denny has his hand up. So Prof, would you like to handle perhaps the carbon footprint angle?
Well, Leng, thanks for the questions. And it is a very important topics to talk about is carbon footprint, water footprint and other footprint, whatever we are coming in. The main challenges that we have at the current baseline study, we do not have any baseline study. At the moment, I think if MPOCC can correct me if I'm wrong, we are now reporting the carbon emissions. It's basically based on some conversion data that we have collected from the industry, how much that their diesel consumption and so on and so forth. So these are the current reporting mechanism that we have, including IPCC, different standards that we have, really look at the reporting data. We have now come to a stage yet into transaction of carbon emission. This is still along, I would say, phase 2 of the project, maybe in the future of the MSPO standard, where we're talking about transaction. Means, for example, if I buy a raw material from Syme and buy a raw material from another company, what are the carbon emission per tons of fruits and how I actually processing it? With that kind of a data, transparency data, then we will be able to track exactly how much carbon emissions per ton of CPO or per ton of whatever products at the end. So I think the tracking or transaction need to be happening in future. There are still a lot of works need to be developed. This is one of, because I'm very particular on this, is because one of my projects Now it's looking at it, how do we transact the data? How do we monitor? How do we build the platforms behind the scene to help the stakeholders to tracking their transaction, at the same time knowing exactly, like you say, the land use change, how the different land coming into the pictures, how it actually help or producing different carbon emission because of the carbon stocks in the soil that they have using under the replanting soil, the replanting plantations, under the mineral soil or whatever soils that they have. So those are a lot of transitions on the LUC, which is we're talking about land use changes. So I would say it's work in progress. We are heading to the right direction because we are setting the baseline. Because currently you ask anyone in the world, probably they don't have the number for you because we doesn't have a baseline study. So it would be great for us to take one step ahead, getting the right reporting, setting the baseline. The next phase, we may look into transaction of the data, tracking on the transaction of the carbon emissions, and then later we can build upon how do we optimize, like doing selections, doing even country exports, how much average carbon emission per ton of fruits or palm oils or other products that we generate in the world. So I probably, like I say, this is a very high level kind of next phase development that required by the MPOCC or MPOCC or whoever that you're interested. So I think this is something that really, really important for us because, like you say, end day, the customer need this kind of information. They need the traceability data. They need to know how much you transact from one to another. I would say, yes, we are heading to the right directions. We are yet to achieve on the numbers that we are looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. And perhaps Mr. Galau, maybe you would like to try to address the question of voluntary versus regulatory. And after that, maybe Dr. Hariso can contribute a bit to that.
Sorry, I didn't really, when you talk about voluntary or regulatory, I guess it's, okay, you go back to RSPO and MSPO. To me, RSPO is voluntary, MSPO is regulatory. Now, moving forward, you talk about, I hope I'm not running out of topic here. It was 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit. And then the coin it into ESG now. And then the carbon neutrality or carbon strategy is the next thing. So I guess this is an ongoing thing, in the sense that previously it was no deforestation. I think we have addressed that through MPOCC and the government. And now come to when we go to certification, you calculate your GSG. Okay, ICC, for example, RSPO and MSPO is coming, going to introduce the GSG calculation. And now next step is carbon. Okay, how do you quantify your carbon? How do you know? Do we know? I mean, this is the question asked. Do we know how much carbon or energy you use to produce 1 ton of your product? So I guess this all come about with, with time. This COP21 or COP22, the recent one. And I was talking to one of the expert radar from overseas. And, we also want to know what is going on. As rightfully pointed out, somebody pointed out just now that you need to find out, if I understand this right, for every unit of product that you produce, we want to know how much energy or rather resource you use, until some point that in 2030 or rather 2050, you cannot produce something that that is not net zero. This is how I understand it. And now they come up with science-based target, and I think there are few framework that are looking at this. Yeah, but as always, as I mentioned just now, we have listened. We have listened to earlier when you talk about RSPO, you talk about no deforestation. Yes, we have listened to our customer because they are the boss. They are always right. But I guess beyond that, these are climate change, or rather, I think they call it climate. I forgot what is it. The government is going to change. If it doesn't improve by 1.5 degrees, something bad is going to happen. I think there is some sense in that. The scientists have done their job. I think Prof. Denny also is well into this. But my question is this, I mean, I rather ask question. The government also, I'm not trying to put the MPOCC into any position. I think most of the time, I think the Doheri also knows that we are in a way close to our customer. Whenever they want something, I mean, they require something, we do it, and we convey it to MPOCC or rather the government. So this, I'm coming up with a question: when is it going to be regulated? But at the end of the day, looking at things, I mean, with all these technologies nowadays, like Dr. Harry said, everybody can see what you're doing down there. If you start cutting one trees, they will know. So this is the moving forward. We have to look at this. We are looking at it. We are trying to look at the situation, what really needs to be done. But at the same time, people like us are lost. We don't want to go ahead and do something that might not be, we have to do it together. I remember that African proverb, if you want to go alone, you want to go fast, you go alone. But you want to move further, you have to go together. So in this sense, I guess the industry is also, looking for direction on what everybody else is doing at the same time. What the academics like Dr. Denny is have, and what the government is I mean, guide the way forward. That's my 1 cent thought there.
Thank you. And Dr. Harry, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I guess things are a bit different for us. We're very large, right? So for us, we will look at it as a business opportunity, right? So my customer basically requires us to deliver to them low carbon palm oil, for example. So if we're able to go and calculate it and spend the money to do all that work and assure them that the product fits their requirements, I get a margin for it, right? So definitely it's something that will distinguish, let's say, the product offering that Saimdabi could provide to everybody else, right? So this is something that would be, I guess it will fund itself, right? Because the customers will most probably be willing to pay a margin for that product, right? And I don't have the data, but I can hazard a guess that if you look at the yields of oil palm, that are so much in excess of, let's say, other oil crops, that on a per unit or per ton basis, I think they would struggle to actually match it. I mean, unless of course you take it that you are planted on peat, right? But I think you can take peat as a separate component, right? Not every country will require, let's say, a low carbon produced palm oil, right? They may, they'll get maybe a discount for purchasing from, let's say, an area planted with peat, for example. So at least then the growers can get a margin for whatever they produce, right? So I think eventually it'll tier itself. At least I think so. But Leng is the economist, so I think it'll eventually find its own levels, right? And I look upon it actually positively.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, the time has gone by really quick, and I think we may only have time for one more question. And I thought to end it off, we could think a bit more about smallholders, which has been brought up by quite a few of you, and also about the Industry Revolution 4.0. Putting in technology and AI and stuff. And I would like to maybe ask the panelists to try and tell us how these two things can connect. So obviously, all this advanced technology is quite expensive, not really accessible to all. Maybe even Prof. Denny can give some ideas on this. How do we make sure that the smallholders are not left behind in this, and also to bring them along as well in our journey towards sustainable development? So maybe Prof. Denny can start and we can go on from there.
Thanks, Helena, for the questions. Yes, I think palm oil is, like I said, is the largest agriculture industry in the country. And I think Malaysia is starting up a very, very important milestone that I'm fully agree and fully support on the MSPO launch. It make it as a mandatory scheme instead of voluntary schemes. That makes the first difference for ourselves in the country. That is a very important position for the country to make this as an inclusive standards. Although I think Mr. Galau was mentioning, yes, you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go together, that is the impact that we are looking at. Because really, to bring everyone together is not easy. And one of the mega challenge, I would say, Malaysia is always we talk about inclusive society. And that's why palm oil shouldn't be different. And we want to bring everyone, including smallholders, be part of the bigger community. And then how can we work together to support each other to achieve? Because why MSPO is particularly important, because it really set the minimum standards for us to practice sustainably. With that kind of a standard, I will sure everyone will be compliant. And you can see we are being scrutinized. I think Dr. Harry has faced this always. We are being changing the goalposts. You know, we have been so many things, one follow another. I think Mr. Galau also feel it. But it's always good that this demonstrated we are resilient to all these scrutinizations. In future, we probably is the best oil. There are no other further comments that can be commended that palm oil is not sustainable. I think the first steps we avoiding for natural forces, that case already established. So we understand that, we acknowledge that, and we no longer going to that. And then all of us are now trying to increase the productivity. You can see from Dr. Harry presentations now, he's talking so many innovations. He talked about IR 4.0. I think SIME have introduced a lot and invested a lot heavily on technology. How can we increase the productivity? Because we, I think all of us agree with me, believe that palm oil has the largest potential in oil productions. At the same time, we should maximize the productivity based on the area of land that we have. I think I'm glad that this round, that this forum actually provide me the statement, because not from myself, because I always talk about this previously, but now I can hear from someone, yes, we want to have the maximum productions from the oil that we have, in the land that we have. I think that is very important. And working together with all the smallholders, all the stakeholders within the whole value chain is extremely important, because no one should left behind. And I mentioned just now clearly that in order for us to really addressing SDG, we are not only looking at profit at one dimensional. There are a lot of work that we are doing behind the scene is actually protecting people, human life, living in those smallholders. Again, I can tell you nowadays, a lot of palm oil estate are providing very good facility for the people who are living there. I think those are very important messages that we need to send out. And I was reading this comments from the chat. One thing that I would say we have not done enough is education on the people, on the good work that we have done. I think this kind of forum is important especially for our younger generations. We have sometimes feel a bit sad, you know, people are just listening to the messages in the social media and, oh, yeah, palm oil is bad, and they don't even find the right facts. I think it is important for us to do. The next thing is, we have been doing a very good job. How do we educate the younger generation, including our own people living in Malaysia, to know what are palm oil, what we are doing, how do we protect the environment, and how do we practice sustainably? I think that is the most important messages that I would say the task that we are doing, on top of all the good implementation strategies, metrics, measurement, whatever it is, educational, right messages, analyzing all the right news or whatever information that we are gathered in the social medias. I always said, as an academic, nowadays it's not about lack of informations. When we were young, I think those days we need to go library to look for knowledges. Now knowledge is abundant. It's about how do we analyzing knowledge and make sure that we process the correct knowledge that we gain throughout the whatever information that we get since. I think that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And perhaps Mr. Tan, from MPOCC's perspective, how do you join the smallholders with what is required to have that sort of technological leap forward?
Wow. Okay. For MPOCC, we are scheme owner. Kind of. So what happens is that what we can do is that, okay, by investing yourself. I just now want one my slide talking about way forward. What we talking about the leap into the technology. So I think that we are planning to go into one of them is blockchain. Okay, so that we can get all the data. Okay, but the thing is that we are not asking the smallholder to pay for it. Okay, instead, okay, we will try to get government entity, government funding to develop this kind of so-called technology. Okay, for the sake of traceability, especially for smallholders. Okay, just like what Prof. Denny always say, MPOCC will always stress on smallholder. We don't want to be left behind. Okay, and one of the things that we think about, how we can improve, actually improve our traceability until the smallholders. Okay, because this is one of our advantage. Okay, compared with other scheme. Okay, we really put in effort to make sure that smallholder join the sustainability agenda. Okay, now we'll make sure that how they can profit from that. Okay, so one of them is that if we can make the traceability from the smallholder apparent until the buyer, I think this will convince the buyer saying that MSPO is another way how you can support a few of the UN SDG goals. No poverty, make sure there's a good living to the smallholders. This must show how this kind of thing trickle down to the smallholders. I'm not saying others are not doing that, they're doing that. But the thing is that we need to sometimes use the technology on make sure the whole thing really happens. So this is why we MPOCC here we try to invest in a new technology. When we're talking about big data management, blockchain. So even we try to make the auditing process, it can to be more in line with not automated. It still need humans, but it's just that the process of auditing can be real time. Instead of you go to the site, take out the note, go back to the office, they come and report. No, it can get the whole thing done in real time. So what happens is that, compared speaking, we try to do it as a service, to build infrastructure. Not for everyone, yes, correct, but we want especially for the smallholders. As you know, when you talk about sustainability, when the smallholder involved in sustainability, in the end, they always come with the last one question: how this can help me in my livelihood? That is always what asked by the smallholders. As long as that they can show that this is practice, can at least help them a bit in terms of their livelihood, that is the big gain for them. So in MPOCC, we look at the IR 4.0. It's not talking about MPOCC or MSPO itself, but instead we're looking at how we can bring this kind of evolution to help the smallholders. Industry, don't need to say will be included, just like how we can make it to cater that this segment of the segment of palm oil that need to be helped. I think Mr. Galau, Dr. Harry will agree with me, because they have been on the ground. They have been looking at the ground. They know how the smallholder work, how they process everything. So I think in the time you want to show the proof to the world also that we don't just say it, but we walk the talk. This I can share.
Thank you. I do want to ask Mr. Galau for his views, because I know that you are very close on the ground both the big companies as well as the smallholders. But Mr. Galau, if you don't mind, can you also sort of address this as your closing remarks? So each of you, the speakers will, and also you, Leng, will get about 2 minutes to give your closing remarks. So Mr. Galau, would you please go first? You need to unmute also.
For the smallholders, right?
Yes.
For us, smallholders is a very important part of our supply chains, because we feel like, I mean, it's not just, as I was mentioning, it's not just charity, it's really is act of justice. You cannot leave them behind. Practically on the ground, we are engaging with MPOB. I mean, for where we are operating, whenever the MPOB is engaging with smallholders, we are there. So really is what we talk about here, what the academic or the industry practice, especially the estate, is talking about. I think it's the gap is so much with the smallholder. They actually don't know. Even I caught one engagement that I have with one of the community in the interior. When we were there, we asked them, how many of you plant oil palm? 300 of them, out of 300, maybe 100, half of them put up their hand. And then the next question we asked, who among you have oil palm MPOB license? Less than, yeah, very, very few. So I guess I'm not blaming anything. I think the industry in Sarawak I'm talking about is, I mean, where am I, is really just, we are the oldest actually, SOPB, 50 years old. The others who are operating at maybe just one round of planting. And the smallholders is just recently, I guess 2010, 2000 at the earliest, 2020. So it is a big job that need to be done. So that is the situation, but MPOB is doing their best, and we are doing every time that we have the opportunity to go. And the smallholders are really, they are very open. So I guess we don't have, we do have participant or audience that is cooperative. So moving forward, I guess we really have to capitalize on the positive of I mean, marketing of what is will be good for them, and everybody have to hold hand to move forward together, especially so for the smallholders. That's my point of view from the ground perspective.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to work backwards. So I would like to call Prof. Denny. So sort of your concluding remarks on palm oil and SDGs.
Thanks, Dr. Helena. I believe, like I said, in various time of my talking today, I mean, forum this today, is really palm oil have contributed a lot in sustainable developments. I think Mr. Galau have also highlighted, Dr. Harry has also shown some evidences that there has been continuously improvement. Yes, there are still room for improvement for us to do better, which is fully agreed. I'm sure that we are on the right track, on the right directions, working together with all the stakeholders, all the policy makers, including MPOCC, MSPO, RSPO, and so on and so forth. I would say that the whole economic on palm oil will be needed for our future generations. So obviously, all the work that we do, maintain it, improve it, and then do the best for our future generations, so that we will still enjoying our oil in the future. We are not losing the oil that we are having today. And although I know there are fluctuations of price, and then get some planters might not be happy because our price is dropping, but those are a lot of short-term impact and fluctuations due to various situations that we are facing. But I'm sure that palm oil is still a very productive oil in terms of the land size that we use per tons of oil that we can generate, and then all the biomasses that we have available in the industry, fully recover it. As I said, I did an analysis on impacting of the palm oil industry towards not only our own industries, but other industry. If you eliminate palm oil from the whole country, the cascade or the ripple effect will be very, very significant for all the other industries. So those need to be taken into consideration when we come to analyzing or reporting our sustainable metrics. So I hope this will help everyone just to think beyond palm oil and also look at how actually impact one another, because those are very complex relationships happening between one sectors to another. So hopefully this forum will open up more opportunity for further discussions. And then also, like I said, it's important for us to educate our future generations about how do we practice sustainable palm oil, and all this good work should be informed and should be publicized in all the different forums or journals and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And now, Dr. Hari, please.
Sorry, you want my concluding remarks, or you want me to?
Concluding remarks.
Okay. Yeah. If I could just touch on the smallholders, because I think it's something close to heart, right? How do they get access to technology? I believe it's possible, right? And that, I mean, two routes that I can think of. One, through cooperative ventures. So as cooperatives, they then can purchase one machine that can be shared out amongst them, and so on and so forth, and that will make it economically viable for them. Another alternative is that already this is happening, that solution providers are out there. For example, in the paddy industry, there are drone operators that provide services to the paddy industry, right? So similarly, as these platforms mature, you will find that there will be those who will make them available to smallholders, because there's a business opportunity there. So I essentially see that actually moving forward and actually supporting them to be more productive. On top of that, most consumers in Western countries would like to buy a bottle of oil that has on its label produced by smallholders in wherever, right? In Sarawak or whatever it is, right? So if we can define the region and so on and so forth, most probably you will be able to get an extra small margin for that, right? So again, there's a business opportunity to actually amalgamate them in some way or other, and create an opportunity to actually brand that oil separate, right? So I think this is basically where the younger generation, the entrepreneurs, will come into their own, right? And perhaps create these new opportunities, right? So because technology has democratized a lot of stuff, because data is freely available nowadays. Everybody has access to it. Wrongdoing is seen by everybody. You know, we are all held to account, which is a good thing, right? And customers demand that we perform to much higher standards, which is also a good thing. So it means that all of us, including the smallholders, all have to step forward and raise the game, so to speak. I think that's my 2 cents worth. So I'm optimistic for the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Tan.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a lot have been said by other panelists, and Prof. Denny, Mr. Galau, Dr. Hari. Okay, so for my side, like this, yeah, MPOCC will continue with the journey for sustainability. Okay, in terms of helping, okay, or assisting the government to transform, okay, the whole industry, the palm industry. So like my slide earlier, I always say that we want to rise the floor. We don't want to rise the bar. Okay, it means be inclusive. Everyone go up together. Okay, so from here, I think MPOCC, we can't work alone. Okay, we really welcome anyone that want to collaborate with us. Okay, actually from the industry, okay, for the smallholders, okay, or okay, NGO, academician. Okay, so what happened? How to make better? Okay, this sustainability implementation in Malaysia. Okay, and it's like just now Prof. Denny say, yes, currently EMS standard, we didn't dive too much in the carbon footprint, but we ready the so-called the baseline. Okay, whereby in the standard, we already require them to come up with the baseline, okay, have a collecting data, everything, because we want to take a stepwise approach. Okay, because we are MPOCC, we are local. Okay, we have our stakeholder, we engage with them, so we know. Okay, if can, we want everyone to be together. So the step approach, I think, is very important. Instead of that, you just put a standard saying that okay, you must reach this standard. So as step approach, I think government giving a lot of effort. Okay, in supporting all this something. Okay, so again, so I always like now if anyone they want to have collaboration with MPOCC, we welcome them. Okay, and for the betterment of palm oil industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Leng, please, your final remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much for everyone's amazing sharing here. For my concluding remarks, I hope you don't mind maybe one word of maybe caution and also something on the positive side. My slight caution is that although we're having a lot of great efforts at the micro level on the smallholder front, small producer front, I would sort of caution, at least at the international level, maybe using the smallholder sort of farmer story too much, because in actual fact, the industry structure is very, some people will call it oligopolistic. And also the share of profits is really not geared towards the farmer side. And I would, compare it to something like, Fonterra in New Zealand or Taiwan, where the shareholders, the farmers actually have share in processing and downstream, which is really not the case where it has evolved in Malaysia. So I'm a little bit cautious on, maybe claiming too much on the smallholder front, because I think if you really dig into it, the distribution is at the macro level is slightly tough to sell. And then on the very positive front, may I just say that with all these fantastic things that we're seeing, the efforts Mr. Galau has pointed out, he's really shown us a lot of tables of efforts and things. I think the great thing that's going to go forward is to really format that so it's easy for people internationally to read the information. So, I mean, even very practical things like showing everything in a table with lines, because we're moving into the era where ESG is being read by AIs. And we just have to make it easy. There's a lot of things in the industry's head, which you think people know, they actually don't know, right? For example, I was talking to a company and, they actually had to say in the annual report, we don't have a child labor policy. And, everyone sort of says that, no, of course we don't, right? Especially in manufacturing, but it has to be stated. So I think we have to really go back to the basics that if it's not said, people suspect, right? And you have to even say basic things, and even to say that, 100% no child labor, or whatever other metric, I think has to be very clearly and read, easily read. Just consider that research, I'm going to be obsoleted, which is why I keep moving. We have to keep moving ourselves, right? You're not going to sit there reading things anymore. The AI is going to look at you. And if you didn't say it, if you didn't provide the metric, and you didn't provide, say, the mapping against SDG number, against a GRI number, and all these, CDP, Sustainalytics, all these ESG rating mechanisms, you just have to make it easy. And I believe that the international arena will be able to understand a bit more once these metrics are in a digestible format. So really, translate the sentences, the descriptive, into metrics, into readable tables, for example. And I'm pretty positive that will, help individual companies and the industry at level as well.
Thank you so much, Leng. That was a really practical note to finish up on. So thanks again to all of our speakers, our panelists, Leng as well for joining me in the discussion section, and to all of the viewers who have also contributed excellent questions as well. And we hope that will be answered in due course. So now I will pass it back to Oscar, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Dr. Helena. It was the very fruitful exchange between the panelists. So Okay, so before we end the webinar, I would like to make a very short announcement about an upcoming event organized by Malaysian Palm Oil Council MPOCC, the sponsoring organization to POPSIG in 2022, as well as the supporting organizations to this webinar. So MPOCC is organizing International Palm Oil Sustainability Conference, IPOSC, on Tuesday, September 13th from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Malaysia time in Intercontinental Hotel, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So this year is the 7th edition of IPOSC since 2008. The theme is shifting sustainability compliance into sustainability stewardship. So for registration and full information, you can access to this event on MPOCC website at www.mpocc.org.my. I repeat, www.mpocc.org.my, or on ICAMI event webpage. Before the webinar ends, we will have a short introductory video about IPOSC 2022. So this concludes the POPSIG-ARPOS Seminar 2022. Thank you to all the speakers, thank you to all the supporting organizations, and thank you to all the audience. And we hope to see you again in the upcoming events. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.